Welcome to the third Artist Trauma. Hopefully, we can give you something to talk with your therapist about. Um, Today, we're doing Harold Pinter. We're talking primarily about what was it? The
The birthday party.
birthday party and a
What
few
I got, what
real
I had time.
details.
Yeah, we're doing the complete works, and unfortunately, I did not have time to go through as much as I wanted to. I was away this weekend.
That's fine.
Read the introductory essay and the birthday party.
Yeah, that's fine. The other ones are great in their own way, but it's not. It's very much in the same voice. It's like it's an elaboration, not another revelation, like reading the birthday party. So, how about you start us off here, Chris? Like, what did you? You had a rather positive opinion of it.
So, what is fantastic I found about Pinter is that there's a line when you're reading anything that is between truth and lies, where in order for something to be a lie, as I think it's Harry Frankfurt's essay on bullshit says, that a lie presupposes the truth in a certain large sense. Someone knows that there is a truth to be had.
Mhm.
And his thesis ultimately was that bullshit was when you don't care about the truth. So the line that Pinter is always dancing, and I think he does it in a wonderful way, is that it would lose its aesthetic wonder if you stopped caring about what the truth was. If you just went, oh, okay, whatever. So I think that what I love about it is he's always dancing a line where characters are lying to themselves or to us, always. And yet at each moment, I found myself still caring about what the truth was.
Yeah. That's what's just absolutely amazing reading Pinter is just this sense of the characters are saying things to each other, but that's not what they're talking about. Those are just excuses. Those are just confabulations. That's just bullshit on some
Mhm.
level that they're used. Maybe not quite in the sense that you were just mentioning um, would put it, but they're lying, but they're lying with their whole soul almost. That there's just something deeply bothering them, and it's not something that they can put into words, or at least very rarely they can do such.
Yes.
And that's just what's amazing. But for those who haven't read the play, it's basically there's not much to say about it. A man Stanley is living at a boarding house with an older couple, Meg and Petey, and two other people come in to be at the boarding house, and they have some kind of relationship with Stan. It's not really clear because nothing's clear in this play, and they end up taking Stanley away. Poor boy. And they have a birthday party in the middle of it. Um, because of course they would.
Of course they would. And the two people that show up to terrorize Stanley are never explained other than by shadowy, vague messages from above.
Now, it's so wonderful just the way that nothing is really explained. There's just this just delightful evasiveness. I mean, there are certain facts that okay, I believe this. Like the fact that it is a boarding house and they have their name on the list of boarding houses for the area. But it's like, well, did Stanley ever play the piano? I'm not actually all that sure on some level. Did he ever? Was
Yeah.
he ever a
So
concert pianist? Because he's lying about going on a worldwide tour to Vladivostok. Like that's a
yeah,
lot.
he did a. So for everyone in the audience, the guy Stanley did a world tour, and then oh wait, no, I played a couple concerts if I remember right, and then oh no, like I gave a concert one time.
and
And
I, and I couldn't, and I was going to have another one, but they locked me up. They locked me out. You know,
they locked him in, right?
no, 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 no.
Oh, okay.
When he tells the story, he's locked out. When Meg is telling the story to McCann and Goldberg, the two menacers, which I
Hmm.
guess is the most precise word for them, um, um, she says, "Oh, they locked him in. I had to stay all night."
Right.
As in, she turns it almost into like a silly little tale after the fact, which is to me like when you're hearing the difference of like, okay, he's telling this sort of lie, this fabulous thing, to her it's sort of to inflate him or to express his resentment towards the world. When she's telling it, she's like she's already reinterpreted that, she's already broken off like whatever meaning there was, and maybe it's not even she's lying, it's just no, it's just this is the way she's putting together the words that Stanley said, um which is just
Yeah, and it's fabulous, and it's also where it's disturbing is, we have that old phrase that's just like a children's phrase that you use for kids in fights, like was it sticks and stones might break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Mhm.
At this one, you could almost make that Pinter's thesis is probably the exact opposite, is that ultimately violence is done in words and
Yes.
actions may happen later or not. No.
Well, we'll get around to the interrogation scene, which is just,
Yeah.
oh my God, like I just can't stand it. It's just too much to bear how beautiful that is, What happened to your wife? You poisoned her with, no, you strangled her to death with arsenic, and and
Arsenic.
the way
Arsenic. What makes you think you have the right to exist?
What about the Albert Jensen's heresy? What?
Yeah.
Just,
And they're just throwing nonsense at him. But of course,
have you
for
for,
Stanley, and I think part of the gimmick is that, like, at certain points, as a listener or a viewer, you're going, that wouldn't get me. But one of them would. One of the lies or one of the things to be caught in would implicate someone. Like, in this position, you go, well, that's fine. I could, these people are just messing around, and you're like, but if they had the right words to say, take me away on a stretcher, I think. I think that that's part of the message of the play, is that it's implicating us in a weird way. Us meaning just like it's including the audience in its scheme, not calling us directly liars, I think, but it is saying that you can be torn down.
well, what I'm getting from it, and this is a little bit because of the introduction. I read the play before I saw the introduction originally. Um, is that there's just this sense of what we're saying. I really get the sense from this play, and this actually is a point that's actually bothered me, and like I think about it when I'm talking with people is, am I actually saying what I'm saying? Are we actually talking about what we're talking about? Am I actually is what I'm really saying just um like actually here's a very benign example of like I was on a walk with my mother, and she just she's a very charismatic person who likes to interact with people, and there's just some random couples walking by, and she just sort of says a few nice words to them, to strangers, um,
Yeah.
and it's like, the actual things I said was meaningless, but it was just a basically nice way of saying implicitly, it's nice to see people. You seem like nice people. Like that. That's all it was. Um,
Or are
so
you
it's
a threat? No.
yeah, it's like it's just like it's like, well, the actual words that were said about like, oh, what a nice day, or oh, isn't this a nice trail, or something.
Hmm.
That's wasn't what they were talking about. They're talking what the real impact of it was just, hey, there's a positive human interaction, and there's negative versions of these sorts of things that
Right.
people have much more regularly. Um, and I really feel like it's a serious question to ask yourself. I've had arguments in the past where I really, at a certain point, the other person really is making solid points, and I know that,
Hmm.
and I need to stop and acknowledge that. But there's this part of me that's just like, no, like I want to win this, or I really feel like there's something right that I'm saying that's being ignored or something. But and so, like at that point, at that juncture, the counter arguments I'm giving, that is a confabulation. That is just, I'm not recognizing what's really happening. It's now become almost a vanity. It's like I'm not talking about the argument. I'm talking about I have a valid point. I'm a person who can think. You know, I want to win. Like that, the words become almost performative, not representational.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, another way is I think you're right, and I think you're onto something, and I also think that that happens whenever you're caught in a structure where you're not the leader of it, or you're not even you're expected to behave in a certain way, like at the DMV or as a student.
Mhm.
That has really nothing to do with how you and I are supposed to behave with each other. And there's a what Lacan calls hystericization, where when you're at like a structure like the DMV, you're almost always in the back of your mind going, what do these people want from me? What does the academy want from me? What does the law want from me? And that affects what you're going to say. Whereas between you and I, it's going to be lesser, or at least that type of what does this person want from me is geared towards something we already previously agreed upon.
Mhm.
This person wants literature talk from me. Let's do that. Whereas, you know, in the Kafkaesque aspect of Pinter, you're never going to get on the wavelength of what that other force wants, what these
Well,
people want, what everyone around you wants,
well,
etc.
well. That's one thing though, is that was very interesting from the introduction that Pinter said. Is it's not that he says there's this misconception people have about his plays that it's a failure of communication that people have. And he says,
Mm-hmm.
no, people actually are they do communicate and they actually talk to ignore that communication, to put a barrier, to
Yeah.
cause the other person to stop. And like here's to me like a great example of a barrier on some level. It's not specifically what, but it's like Goldberg. Goldberg, who was the greatest character, one of the harassers of Stanley. He just this is just hit.
For those of you who haven't read the play, just think of the Joker.
No, I wouldn't go that far. I'm a homie Joker. But yeah, there's a point there. Um, Uh, you know, I believe in a good laugh, a day's fishing, a bit of gardening. I was very proud of my old greenhouse, made out of my own spit and faith. That's the sort of man I am. Not size, but quality. A little Austin, tea and Fuller's, a library book from Boots, and I'm satisfied. But just now, I say just now, the lady of the house said her piece, and I, for one, am knocked over by the sentiments she expressed. Lucky is the man who's at the receiving end. That's what I say. How can I put it to you? We all wander onto our toad through this world. It's a lonely pillow to kip on, right? I mean, that's just perfect. Like just the self-satisfaction, just the bloviation, the conventionality. It's like here is a human being who has constructed an edifice of words out of which you could not penetrate into him. It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
The reason why, yeah, I think you're totally right. I would also say the reason why I said Joker was because so in the second Batman film, The Dark Knight or Rises or whatever it is,
Yeah.
the Joker goes, "Do you want to know how I got these scars?" And he tells two different stories about it, and that was the first time I had seen that technique.
Mm.
But Harold Pinter does that same technique and follows through with it. Um, on the I have the page marked down, I can read it, but he goes like, "I was here. My mom calls me this name," and then the next one is my wife calls me this name, and the third time he says something like, "Well, I'm known by this name by a handful of people," or something.
Well,
Like, he
it's not-
changes the person.
yeah, it's like the first time he's just saying like, "Oh, my mom, she was." I remember she used to say to me, "Sammy, old boy, come on up." And then later, it's like and then they said, "Well, I thought your name was Nat." She called me Sammy, and then like later, that's like a different name he comes up with, and it's like, what's happening here? What are these words? Um,
So he goes, "Oh, he says it even better when the name comes back up." He goes on page 81,
mhm.
"A good woman, a charming woman, My mother was the same. My wife was identical. Which really, it actually, in very clear Queen's English, confuses the matter into, wait, are these people even existing people? Are they identically non-existent? Or was there one role? You're like, I don't know. But you said it so clearly and convincingly.
Is it possible and necessary, or just necessary and possible? You know, that's what happens with the whole. That's what Goldberg says at a different juncture, and it's just such a
Yeah. But
attack
then that,
on reason.
it is an attack on reason, but then that through line climaxes on page 86 when it doesn't matter, mom or wife, okay, one of them called him the name, but not frickin' McCann. Don't
Yeah.
call me that name.
Don't call me.
That is reserved for 1, 2, or 0 people.
Never. And what it actually says here, when like when Ken's calling him, Nat, sign me, and then Goldberg, what did you call me? Who? Murderously, don't call me that, in all caps. Never call me that. Right, and he goes berserk. But
And it's the first time Goldberg uh loses it, but I mean, I would argue, I'm not sure if that's betraying the truth or anything, or if it's just the next Goldberg being zany.
yeah, well, it's more. Yeah, it's well. That's the thing, is that why does he go berserk there? Now, I will say, I did watch the movie that William Friedkin, the guy who directed The Exorcist and The French Connection,
Oh, I love both those films. Okay.
um, did of it, and and I believe, I mean, I'm pretty sure Harold Pinter was involved. Um, and Goldberg does get upset at other junctures, so that's not the only time he loses cool. Certainly, that's the most time. That's when it gets really personal. But
Mm.
he's not just a flat sort of bourgeois comfort, um, like he is in those particular phrases. And one thing about Goldberg is, he has all these wonderful, wonderful things to say about how how great life is, or whatever it is. I just have to pull up one more before I get to this other point. Um, um, one thing Uncle Barney taught me. Uncle Barney taught me that the word a gentleman is enough. That's why when I had to go away on business, I never carried any money. One of my sons used to come with me. He used to carry a few coppers, for paper perhaps, to see how the MCC was getting on overseas. Otherwise, my name was good. Besides, I was a busy man. It's just stuff like that.
It's
That's,
great. I,
and
I think there's also there's a reminiscence of, did you ever watch The Umbrella Academy?
no.
So there's the two detectives, and they're at the beginning from a shadowy organization from above.
Mhm.
They wind up not being like these two characters in here, but I was just picturing the older detective, because he's always like, when can I retire? The difference is that in the show he's just a guy looking to retire, whereas here I think that Goldberg's desire is not only not a, I think it's completely like a thing we can't get onto the wavelength of.
Well, it's to
Or
me.
or is it that he likes terrorizing and that's just kind of hiding in your face?
Well, I take him to sort of represent the sort of styled, conventional professional. Like he's someone who's, who he stands. By the way, Pinter's characters don't stand for things. They're not abstractions walking around. But there's a certain sense in which, like, no, like that kind of person, the Goldberg is the sort that's like, yeah, he now feels he has a certain place in the community. He has a certain view about standard values. And that's what he's for. And he likes doing his job because it gives him that status.
Yes.
Um, I think that's what he's about in a big way. And he really he just had a speech about just anything. And he's really a very sinister kind of person in another way of like, there's this woman Lulu, who, he literally fondles in an earlier part of the play.
Yeah.
And the next morning she's saying to him, "You're leaving today." With growing anger, she says, "You used me for a night, a passing fancy, Goldberg. Who used who?" Lulu, "You made use of me by cunning when my defenses were down. Who took them down?" That's what you did. You quenched your ugly thirst. You taught me things a girl should know before she's been married at least 3 times. Now you're a jump ahead. Why are you complaining about? And it's just like that's just wonderful. And it's like what's so great is like the inhumanity of it. Of
Yeah, yeah.
he's turning everyone like there's this girl who okay she slept with him prematurely or whatever, seduced, but it's like she's very upset that it's like yeah that was a one night stand, it didn't mean anything, and he's giving her compliment and he's saying everything she's saying like about how she was used he's turning into you're better off because of that. You should be thanking
Well,
me. um
and also there's this aspect of like on that note, the wife, what's her,
Meg.
Meg had a great time, and that's like really funny to me. Just that Meg was like woke up like, whoa, what's up? That was a nice birthday party.
Yeah.
I think that that's actually more crucial. Like, I think that's a nice little thing, but I think it's like actually super crucial that Meg had that experience to stitch the whole thing together, because it gives the birthday party some sort of function. Like, yeah, someone had a good time at the birthday party. It was Meg.
Yeah,
It was Meg's party in a certain way.
with Meg, I get the sense of this very slanternly dull, nice, but not particularly good sort of middle-aged woman. And
Who's
what?
super not intelligent. Also, I mean, I think it's important that
Yes,
we say there are
yes,
intelligent characters in this play. Meg is not an intelligent character.
no, no, certainly not. And she, what happens with her? But the thing is, she and Stanley are having some kind of affair or something in the past. It's really unclear, but it's definitely something like that. And then at the fact that at the very end, after Stanley has been taken away, and she's just saying, "God, wow, God, I was the belle of the ball.
Yeah.
Beautiful." Um, like the fact that she felt that way, it's almost like, yeah, that's the sort of value she actually has. Like Petey, her husband expresses more concern and anxiety for Stan. He's
Yeah.
completely helpless, but there's something more human there, and we get that impression. And in contrast, Meg, who's had an affair with the guy, is like it's like yeah, no, she's about vanity.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
she's just a
And
superficial thing, like
yeah.
Goldberg on a certain
So
level.
do you think Petey's the everyman? Like that had slightly more rational thoughts, so we had to get him out of there for a period of time because he wouldn't let he wouldn't
Uh,
let the play happen.
yeah, why is Petey there exactly? I
Well, he's not there. I mean, it's important for everyone to know Petey is not there for Act Two.
yeah, he has a chess game on tonight.
I gotta go be normal. See ya.
He's too busy like arranging the beach chairs because that's his
And by the way,
job.
I
um
would say Petey is actually like pretty not normal in the fact of his absence and the way he fails to pick up on certain things that are happening. But then he does pick up in Act Three and shows concern, but it felt very detached.
yeah, because he's one thing is he's very helpless about it, as in, and well, one thing is that he's sort of pushing back on McCann and Goldberg of like, where are you taking him? And then they say, well, you can come along with us if you like. And I go, nope, nope, I'm not going there. He knows that that's just too much, as any reasonable person would.
We're gonna go see the doctor. Well, whatever he is.
He's. I can just imagine what Goldberg would say about the doctor.
Well, he said he was.
He's a professional at the top of his. Well, I was just being had my checkup with Doctor Phillips. He tapped my knees, patted me on the back. Looked down my throat. Just gave me the full one. Oh, I tell you, the doctors like that don't come around all that much anymore. I can just see it's that wonderful. But actually, yeah, Petey is kind of just sort of a slightly daft, friendly. I don't want to say everyman, but something like that. Just standard person. That's enough.
Every man is a little like I guess problematic of a phrase in a Harold Pinter play because the circumstances. I think that there is also an aspect of British critique here because like the way in which people are their flaws strikes me not as like American. It strikes me as very, very British. Uh in the detachment or in maybe some other ways, but I just had the feeling of like, oh, this play would be a different type of play were the characters American in the American housewife scenario. Like you could have everything that's happened the same way, but I think some of the mannerisms would be different.
Yeah,
The
that's
figure of PD would be, I think, more slightly different. I think there could be a retelling in American play where you'd have to change some structural things and it would function the same way.
yeah,
But
that's a very good point in the sense that Pinter, when you think about the theater of the absurd, you really think about this dimension detached from everything else.
yeah,
Just the wasteland waiting for Godot, or just some bizarre farce like in UNESCO. But here it's like, no, this is very much England in the 1950s, 60s. This is a conventional housewife and husband, and these people, like you've met them, like they are. Well, I haven't met the person, but just like the idea, like they feel real and lived in such a significant way. Like they feel like they belong to a specific milieu. Like Pinter is a
yeah,
naturalist in a fundamental, well, not a fundamental, but in a significant sense.
yeah. I don't think he wants us to detach ourselves from critique because I mean, didn't there was a thing at the end of the play of like, don't let them take you away, don't let them do it or something. And he said that line later in his life as like a maxim for living. I don't remember where it is, but it's like, don't let them rob you of your stuff or whatever. So I think there really is an aspect of message in that point of don't let the shadowy people take you to the dark place or something. Don't let people rob you of your discourse or something.
Well, I'm not gonna go with that. Um,
Okay.
I don't think there's a moral in a
No.
sense like that. It's more to me. I just take it more as a saying it's a slice of life is weird, but just like, yeah, this play and its events and the way they talk past each other, it's like this is a feeling about things. This is, it's like Kafka. Like Kafka doesn't have a moral. It's like, yeah, this is what it's like to be caught up in this sort of bizarre, inhuman, complicated, intractably complicated situation.
Yeah.
Or even Chekhov in a sense. Like Chekhov, he doesn't, like Chekhov doesn't present it as a moral. I mean, maybe you can kind of get an idea. Okay, don't get in that situation. You can personally do that, but Chekhov is not. He doesn't give a solution. He's just, here's a problem. Here's a
Yeah.
thing. And I feel like Pinter is closer to that of, yeah, this is just how you feel about things. Jesus Christ.
I
Um,
feel like so the quote I found the quote on page 96. PD, Stan, don't let them tell you what to do.
yeah,
The only reasonable sentence in the play.
yeah,
Sense. And
yeah. Which is, and he says it broken. He says it like it's really hit him hard in a way. And actually, this is one of the few moments of genuine communication.
yeah,
Um, like you really actually feel like this is actually what PD feels. This is not a evasion. like most of the other style. But I just have to. This is just the thing leading up to it. The way, because taking them away and like the way that they, it really says like at the beginning in '92, what McCann and Goldberg are talking to Stanley, and Stanley's not responding, and says they begin to woo him gently and with relish. Um, and at a certain point, they just start saying, "From now on, we'll be the hub of your wheel. We'll renew your season ticket. We'll take 2 pence off your morning tea. We'll give you a discount on all inflammable goods. We'll watch over you, advise you, give you proper care and treatment, let you use the club bar, keep a table reserved, help you acknowledge the fast days, bake your cakes, help you kneel on kneeling days, give you a free pass, take you for constitutionals, give you hop tips. We'll provide the skipping rope, the vest and pants, the ointment, the hot pullets, the finger stall, the abdomen belt, the earplugs, the baby powder, the back scratcher, the spare tire, the stomach pump, the oxygen tent, the prayer wheel, the plaster of Paris, the crash helmet, the crutches, a day and night service, all in the house. That's it. We'll make a man of you and a woman. You'll be reoriented. You'll be rich. You'll be adjusted. You'll be all right in joy. You'll be a mensch. You'll be a success. You'll be integrated. You'll give orders. You'll make decisions. You'll be a magnate, a statesman. You'll own yachts, animals.
Yeah. Animals and animals. Well, what I love about that, the animal line at the end becomes double. It becomes like what's that word? Not overloaded, but it's not. It starts becoming a sliding signifier where it starts off like animals, and then by the end it's like animals, right? Like it becomes like a chant of some like like cannibalistic tribe about to eat you. Animals, you're an animal. We're gonna eat you. Oh, so
maybe he has that, but I took that actually not so much in that way, which I think is plausible what you're saying, but more just it just felt to me like of all the things to seduce a man with, you'll own animals, like that's the one thing you have to like underline.
It's kind of like sometimes when Rick's drunk and he's talking to Morty, he's like, Morty, we're gonna go out and we're gonna plow the farm, and there's gonna be animals, Morty. Animals.
Yes. That's what I'm thinking. Like I can see that. That's the thing that should make you tumescent.
So I found the Harold Pinter in conversation what he said. So he said, December 1988 section of an interview says, the quote goes, "Stan, don't let them tell you what to do." In conversation in 1988, Harold Pinter said that he lived that line all his life, that stubborn individuality has been a chief motivating factor for the playwright, whether he was rejecting his call up for national service or blah, 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 blah. Now, that is hearsay. Someone else said that. And I think it's plausible. And I think that I don't think that line gets us very far. I just think it's kind of like like we all have little maxims that we live by. And I think that Harold Pinter chose that one. And I think it does sort of function in the play, but it's not very complicated. It's not like the meat and bones of what's going on. It's sort of just it seems like a recipe to get out of disaster more than it is a great literary interpretation.
Yeah. This is, this is one thing that he talks about of, Pinter is clearly deeply influenced by the existentialists on some level. And that really comes through in the introduction. When he just says things like, and he's talking about, words and just like how he gets pleasure from arranging them, writing them, all of that. But he says, but at the same time, I have another strong feeling about words, which amounts to nothing less than nausea. Such a weight of words confronts us day in, day out, words spoken in a context such as this, words written by me and by others. The bulk of it is a stale, dead terminology. Ideas endlessly repeated and permuted become platitudinous, trite, meaningless. Now, that's great. That's great. Now, that's in a sense, that's a deeper sense of the idea of don't let them tell you what to do, of don't live in their dead terminology. Don't let them become a platitude.
Don't let them don't speak with the words that they tell you to speak with. Don't, or don't speak for them. Don't speak through them. Or yeah, exactly. I mean, you're saying it better than I'm saying it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't let them. Um, I mean, it's just a Goldberg is like the absolute, just clear example of just this kind of. It's a dead, stale terminology. It just doesn't mean anything. Here's another way, a little more of a sinister way that it comes up versus just the happy bonhomie that he has normally. But McCann, his assistant, I guess, who's is very concerned about the job, whatever the job happens to be, which I guess is taking Stanley. Goldberg says to him about what's this job going to be like. He says, "Well, the main issue is a singular issue and quite distinct from your previous work. Certain elements, however, might well approximate in points of procedure to some of your other activities. All is dependent on the attitude of our subject. At all events, McCann, I can assure you that the assignment will be carried out and the mission accomplished with no excessive aggravation to you or myself. Satisfied?" Like that's like it's just such a wonderful piece of bureaucratese. It's an evasion on a deep level.
And they're
It's
basically
stale.
like tax collectors.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like in the castle, in Kafka's castle. The scene in the bedroom of that one bureaucrat, and it's just like this incredibly long speech about, you know,
Yes.
and about just like, and he's getting this administrative fervor about these technical aspects which are almost unintelligible. It's
Lam-
just
Lampooned in a Futurama, the figure of Hermes.
yeah.
No, you're empirically correct, or you're technically correct. The best kind. Which is like one of those great lines from Futurama, because Hermes is that figure, and
Yes.
not. I mean, Hermes has other dimensions, but when he's the bureaucrat, he's in that zone. So I found two examples. So I had three examples of other times people speak the way Pinter speaks. In terms of the flat out lie as a backstory, just that particular, very particular way that Pinter arranges the characters and
Hmm.
ways of speaking. So the first was a song by a band called Deer Hunter, and it's a song dedicated to Jimmy Lee Lindsay Jr., who was an indie rocker who overdosed.
Hmm.
And but instead of writing like "Oh, we love you, you were great, come, we're so sad you're dead," the title of the song is "He Would Have Laughed," and the lyrics are fragmented and very strange. So like they go, "Only bored as I get older. I'm finding the ways to cult of time." But it ends with, "Yeah, I lived on a farm. Yeah, man. I never lived on a farm. Oh my God, where did all my friends go?" And I lived on a farm. I never lived on a farm. Oh, okay. All right, never mind. And then you go, "Oh, he would have laughed because he probably hates eulogies." So instead of a eulogy, you get the authentic love letter to the man who died, which is that, he was a trickster. So that was the first one I found where I was like, "Oh yeah, that briefly embodies that discourse." And the other one is still the Joker. This is infinitely better in a certain sense than the Joker, so I don't even want to bring it up more than just the scene of like, in the Joker, at the end of the day, he kind of just wants chaos.
Hmm.
Whereas I think the structural difference is that here, I don't think you know what he wants.
Well, you don't know what Goldberg wants.
Does he just want chaos?
No,
Does he want to do the? Is he just? Is this?
Goldberg represents order. He represents conventional order. Like he's not tearing down the system. He's a respected pillar of the community. He's a man who goes to Sunday school for charity. He's someone who believes in the general enrichment of humankind. You know, that's what this guy is.
So then what about Stanley? You
Well,
know, like what about Stanley makes him the target?
well, we don't know. But I mean, Stanley. I mean, the thing is
I mean, yeah, we don't. I mean, knowing we don't know what's like. I don't know
yeah, like the
let's think
sort of
about.
okay, like if you're gonna read the text in a very literal sense, the
Mhm.
closest thing you can kind of get is they belong to some kind of organization, McCann and Goldberg, and it's mentioned by McCann like that, you know, you betrayed the organization. You know, in like
Yeah,
one of these dialogues, you know, filled with 10 other accusations. Um, and so there's a sense like, yeah, okay, something like that. Maybe that's from the past. Maybe that's what's going on. But I mean, you can't take that seriously or literally in that way. It's like, oh, maybe.
yeah,
Um, it's more just the only thing I really get about Stanley is a little bit like, okay, you know, here's a guy who's kind of a mess, sort of sarcastic, um, not, but you know, rather anodyne fundamentally. He doesn't fit in with things. He's just, you know, bumming around this boarding house. Um, and they, you know, the conventional they, have are now seeking him out. The world is not letting him be. Um,
right.
that's kind of the way, the level that I'm on. Of you know, Goldberg, he just represents everything conventional about human life. He's also kind of a you know a seedy character ultimately with the way he sleeps with Lulu, and you know taught her things that a woman shouldn't know until after her third marriage. Um,
That one made me wonder, but that's not
yeah,
important.
like you really do like what exactly was in the briefcase? Um,
Yeah, like I think, and the other thing I think is implied is that like you know, it's not the fact that it happened; it's his response. Is that he's leaving. Like you know, Lulu was prepared to come down and be with the man again.
yeah,
I think that was how her character was, you know, felt betrayed at him leaving.
yeah,
Not she was only betrayed about what happened when she found out it was a one night stand and he's
yeah,
ghosting
yeah.
her.
That is what it was.
Fair
Um,
enough.
which is you know
So
like a good reason. And of
and
course, you know
also
she was very attracted to Goldberg because you know he resembled her dead lover. And he was in his stride of like, of course, you know, like whatever it was. Jesus Christ. The things these characters say. Um,
well that was and I think that one of the things that we have to say to the audience is that um this might be a 10 in terms of just sheer entertainment value.
yeah,
No, in terms of just high octane, like this is like Fast and the Furious for lit people. Like it is
like
not slow.
yeah, just put it in my fucking vein. You know,
Yeah.
it's just so jacked. Every phrase is so jacked. I mean, there are things that are more intense, like the that God for like just the interrogation scene, or just the one I just read of you know trying to seduce Stanley with you know animals, you'll own
Oh,
animals, like that to me, that just I don't know how. I mean, just the random arrangement of these things, which are not all of them all that entertaining. Like you'll provide the ointments, you know,
yeah. Or
we'll
like
remove your
you
season
know,
ticket. Like these are,
or things that can't go together, like you know, like, are you guys Christian? Sure, man. Whatever
um,
you need. We're Christian, I guess, or not. Who cares? Well, you need a prayer wheel?
but you don't believe in the Albigensian heresy.
Yeah.
It's just like another one of these random things from the interrogation. And I have to say, when I saw the Friedkin's version of the birthday party during the interrogation sequence, and like they're just, you know, it's like, you know, why the chicken didn't cross the road? Why, you know, why the chicken cross the road? And then they switch it to like, what, you know, he doesn't know which came first, the chicken or the egg.
Doesn't know.
And when Stanley screams at the end, to me, that is almost just I mean, it's a climax. It's a physical, like, oh God, yes, this is amazing. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know any other like work where I'm just so absolutely jacked. And we're like from like that moment of emotional intensity. And I think it is partly like it comes from just the sheer fracturing of the words, the absurdity of the phrases, but said with such conviction and menace. God.
Yeah. And then the other thing, the other media I was kind of reminded about, um, which doesn't track in its entirety, but have you ever read A Good Man is Hard to Find?
No.
Flannery O'Connor. Oh, it's one of the best short stories I've ever read. Um, well then wait, let's not. I'll
Yeah.
That'll come up later because we'll probably wind up reading some Flannery O'Connor because she's pretty she's a force. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
like
curious about her in part because I know someone else who's read some of her, and she found her to be very inauthentic with some of her characterizations. So I'm curious. I want to have an opinion about this person. Um, so we'll see. So
I mean, well, yeah, we'll get there. I'll probably put it on a list then that we'll
yeah.
read later. But like, I do think that like when Pinter is doing this and is making Stanley go crazy, um, I don't know. I just liked it. I think that there's probably some further lines though that we can jump in here about what things meant and why. I mean, I do wonder if the if oh my gosh, Goldberg in occupying that normal space,
Mhm.
that normal, like I don't mean normal as in every day, but
Well,
like absolute Das Man, the they positioning.
yeah, as in the sense that like in Madame Bovary, like not flip. I'm trying to remember the character. Homais takes, or I'm trying to think of another. Like certain Sartre doesn't really have characters. Not in what I've read, he has characters that are like the representative of conventional society, but like that's what he's talking about. That's Goldberg is what he would point to of like the inauthentic personality.
I
Um,
think I think it's almost like saying the they is crazy. Like Goldberg in one sense represents this very normal, um robbed of subjectivity speaking that's just from the they. But I
mhm.
do think that the ultimate result is that Goldberg is that it's like that way of speaking is itself maniacal, or because he uses that way of speaking to torture a man. So it can't be just normal. There has to be something about it that's torturous.
Well, let's see. It's when they really torture Stanley, it's when they're asking him all of these questions, and and that scene, the interrogation, like does he break Stanley? Like Stanley, he barely says two words after that scene. The content of that of the interrogation scene. Oh God, let me just try to hunt it down here. It's in the middle of Act Two. Um, it's just these insane questions of just things like is a number eight is the number 846 possible or necessary? Neither. Wrong. Is the number 846 possible or necessary? Both. Wrong. It's necessary but not possible. Both. Wrong. Why do you think the number 84 is necessarily possible? Must be. Wrong. It's only necessarily necessary. We admit possibility only after we grant necessity. It's possible because of necessary, but by no means necessary through possibility. The possibility can only be assumed after the proof of necessity. So that's a scene. That's like an exchange, and there's more. But
Yeah. By the
but
way, I was wrong earlier. I said what makes I said it wrong. What makes you think you exist? You're dead. That was the whole thing.
yeah.
Yeah, you're a plague gone bad. There's no juice in you. You're nothing but an odor.
nothing but an odor.
Yeah, it's like, oh wow, okay.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. And actually, I think actually you're right. It just this is so many great. It just I'm a can and just this at one point in the middle of it all after it's like saying, what do you use for pajamas? Stanley's nothing. You verminate the sheet of your birth, McCann. What about the Albigensis heresy? And it's like, what is that? What is that? What about it, McCann? What
Is
about
that
the
actually
Albigensis
a thing?
heresy? Why
Did
are
he?
you bringing this up?
Is that? I didn't actually look it up. Is the Albigensis heresy a thing?
I mean, no, yeah, I know it is a thing. I think I even knew what it was at one point in my life. I'm actually so curious. What
I
it?
mean, this is totally irrelevant, but I just want
Yeah,
to know.
it's just like yeah,
Oh,
well,
this is so inside baseball.
yeah, Albigensian. Oh my God, what
They
is?
were a heretic sect in southern France in the
Oh
12th
them, them.
century.
Oh
They were
fuck.
identified with the Cathars, and they're yeah, okay, blah blah blah.
Oh, oh yeah, those people were like out there crazy and like they believed in well, they were total pacifists. So like when they got crusade against, they're easy to exterminate. But they also believed in like when someone was going to die, like there was a special like last rites given, and you after that you were not allowed to eat. So it'd be certain it'd be your last rites. Um, because even if you got better, you'd starve thereafter. And there's other sorts of things about it that's great. What's so great about it is
Wow.
there are other heresies that people like still believe in different ways. Like, oh, you don't take the Eucharist seriously. Maybe you don't believe in the Trinity, or maybe you're Pelagian. I mean, that's like, people are sympathetic to Pelagianism. This is one where it's like this is something that died in 1300. It
Yeah,
was
right.
exterminated.
By the way, if you go to the Albigensian Crusade Wikipedia page, there's a mural from the time that shows a painting of it, and it just shows a bunch of people on swords murdering people, going like, because they don't have any weapons. Sorry, it's not
Yeah,
funny. A little
Christianity is
funny.
a religion of peace.
Yeah. Well, apparently for the Albigensians it was.
Yeah, she was.
Poor Albigensians.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but they were mother defilers. Um,
That's so here's the what I wonder. I think that the important part of, so obviously, to get a general theme, the reason for that reference is it is supposed to be obscure and something that they are
yeah,
assuming that he's supposed to know, and is failing to live up to his responsibility of knowing that
yeah, it's
that random thing
yeah,
that
it's
doesn't really matter at all in 1950s
yeah,
England.
like it's not something. It's just so wonderfully off topic, and it's just like okay, one thing about it. Okay, just earlier, the reason why I was reading that quote about is 847 possible and necessary. Um, like that whole thing and the contradictoriness of like, oh, it's necessary but not possible. We only need possibility after we have necessity. It's like this is just. It's just an absolute absurd. I mean, it's contradictory at its core. It's overwhelming you with its technicality. It's so abstract as to be completely detached from human life. It's something very Goldman in the sense of it's this technicality that he's assaulting you with. I don't know exactly what it is. It's just I think it's like all of those things that like the coldness and impersonality of those abstractions makes it extraordinarily menacing, and the fact that it's necessary but not possible adds a sense of you can't understand this. You can't understand this. Maybe there's a sense in which that makes sense, but no, no, not in any sense that you can understand. It's like confronting Kafka.
Mhm.
This is what it'd be like if one of the bureaucrats from Kafka yelled at you, because they don't yell. Like all the bureaucrats you deal with in Kafka are they're vaguely friendly a lot of the time.
you
Yeah,
know.
they're approaching it. This is one where it's like, no, no, they're coming for you. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, and the smile you gave is exactly the smile. That's the smile. It's not a smile of, oh, we had a great time reading literature. It's the smile of like, it's the meme smile. It's the meme. It's the the troll meme. They're
yeah,
trolls. They're kind of trolls. They're like Gossmon trolls. They're the they.
no, there's more to it though. Like
Yeah.
trolls imply okay, like it's sort of like a knowing inauthenticity. Like yeah, like I know this. I know I'm being a jerk. I know I'm getting a rise out of you.
Yeah.
Well, this is a sort. Well, this isn't like it's posting Nazi stuff just to inflame the normies.
Right, right.
Um, this is something. No, I am just a Nazi. Like I just advocate National Socialism. You know.
That's
Uh,
like, oh, by the way, if you ever got famous on Fox News, they'd take that clip and be like, Raymond Schramm advocating Nazism.
I'm
And they're
so ready. I'm so ready.
so
Uh,
ready.
um,
But no, I think you're right. But I think it's even more specific. I think that the factor there that matters is that they're doing a job. Where a troll is not sent by anyone. I mean, usually, sometimes they're sent by Russia, but like they are there to do a thing, and so it's like under color of official right. That's not it's more generic than that, but it's important that they're there in the service of someone, because if they weren't, if the play was not written and there was no shadowy organization, these two people just showed up, I wonder if the experience would be trolling.
well, it's not. It's not true. I don't. I really don't think trolling is the right characterization here. Um,
Okay.
as in, they're not. They have a very definite mission, and they take that very seriously. Either Goldberg through his consummate professionality, or through McCann's worried anxiety. Um, like there is, they're serious about it. There's nothing wry in
And
there.
but wouldn't it be, so would it be then if they didn't have a mission? If they, because trolls don't have a mission other than, like, the mission is just to fuck with you. There's no goal. There's no one sending them out usually.
Mhm.
So like if these two characters didn't have a mission, first of all, I think it would ruin the play.
Yeah, it would. It would. Is in like if they were just sort of too. You got the impression they were basically just too homeless. They were just murder hoboing. You know. Um,
Happy Games. It's literally Funny Games. Funny. So the plot of Funny Games is two men show up at a house and terrorize and murder, if it's a horror movie, murder a family for no reason. And it's like 6 out of 10. It's fine, but you don't even like, there's no
like
interest.
okay,
They're
you
just kind
need.
of there.
Well, yeah, I can see that situation being like interesting and profound in a certain way. I think this is a really important thing here that you're saying here is like the fact there's some sense of an organization that they represent, that they have
Yeah.
a long arm that's coming out for you, that there's no escape, in on some level, like that's central. That's central. That makes the world inimical. It's like, no, it's not just like this is an aberration of like, yeah, like, okay, you got murder hoboed, okay. um it's like, no, this is, they're out, they're looking for you, get ready, Stanley. you know um
Yeah. So like Zizek has a book on violence, and there's two types. There's three types, but the only ones that matter here are two: subjective violence and symbolic violence, which he calls something else. But I'm gonna bastardize him a little bit and just kind of make it make sense. So like
well, he's a
subject
bastardization of other people, so that's fine.
yeah, I
Oh,
mean, of course, he's Zizek, so I don't think he minds. So like subjective violence is like you get in a bar fight and you're drunk. And there might have been societal factors that led you to get drunk or whatever, but at the same point, you got murdered, whatever. You walk, you don't give a robber money, he stabs you. It's like, okay, there's other lenses to look this through as to why that happened. But one of the biggest lenses is just that guy killed you. That's subjective. You know,
Yeah,
you get in a fight. Um, and I think that in funny games, it's just subjective. These people show up and
yeah,
they
yeah,
kill.
yeah.
Whereas in this, when you have that other element in there, it's not just subjective. There's another element that brought them there in the first place to do harm to Stanley.
Yeah, as in they're representatives of the world. As in, like there is a real sense in which when just somebody gets murdered, you know, in the United States, let's say, it's like somebody gets murdered, like that's a terrible tragedy. But it's very different if, someone was executed falsely. Like that's kind of we
Of
take
course,
that
yeah,
more seriously in a big
of
way
course.
because no, this is the system of justice. We don't want it to be a system of injustice. Um,
Infinitely better way to say it than I could have. Yes, that's great.
you're
That's it.
getting there. You're getting there.
That's it. I think that, yeah. So here, there's that, message from above element that if
Stinks.
it wasn't there, I basically every time I read a great work, because I'm an artist, you know, part of me is looking for, well, where could have this gone? Blase. And I think that there's any number of avenues towards this have failing. And
Yeah.
this is one of those elements where if it wasn't there, the tightrope would not have been walked so
Well,
elegant.
I mean, one thing is that there are other kinds of stories you can convey that Pinter can do. Like it doesn't always have to be this sort of this Kafka-esque malice in the back. And one thing I do want to mention is we do have the very clear sense of there's an organization, but we also there's a very great deal of unclarity about that too. Um, do they really represent an organization? Like, you have to doubt yourself on some level. Like, it's like, yeah, they're sort of saying that, they're alluding to that, but I part of me doubts that. It's just like, was Stanley really a great pianist? I don't know. Like you have to
Yeah.
put a pin in that of like, yeah, I'm unsure a little bit there too. It's not like Kafka where it's like, yeah, yeah,
No,
like no, I went to the law court. You
yeah,
know,
the real is fixed. Whereas in this one, I think you're making like a brilliant point because I think one of the darkest ways to read the play is that you could decide they're just two serial killers showing up and they've invented this organization just to make it seem more structured than it actually is.
Yeah, well, one thing is you say it's like reading it as if that were another interpretation that could be what Pinter actually meant. And I don't take it, I think in a sense it's a thought. It's a thought that crosses through your mind of like, wait, are they really is there really an organization therefore? It's more like to me it's like, yeah, like we don't know. We live in a world of agnosticism. This is one possibility among many possibilities. That you just have
Yeah.
to, you have to live in skepticism here. There's nothing certain about the world around you. It's all, it's a Rorschach test to a little bit, and it's very definitely that. It's very definitely that. There's no
It is.
ambiguity about the ambiguity.
It is, but
Um,
the ambiguity is structurally limited. So I agree with you, and I think you're actually completely right. But the ambiguity is limited based on whatever they say yes or no to. Someone's like, I was a pianist. It wouldn't make sense in interpreting to be like, oh yeah, Stanley was actually a professional banker. You'd be like,
yeah,
oh, well, he didn't posit any. It doesn't. That's not relevant. What's relevant is pianist, not pianist.
yeah.
There's a binary there, and so he's always working in binaries that give you a little bit of fixedness, so you're not wondering if he actually played the viola or some crap.
Yeah, I feel like it's like it's like you're looking in a dark it's like you were watching um it's almost like you were watching like a mugging or some kind of violence across, like from 50 feet away in a dark alley, and so dark you can barely make out the forms, you sort of get the sense, yes, that person is somehow being victimized, and those two are the ones that are wrong. But there's just things that don't, that you're unclear about. Like, do they know each other? Is this a drunken brawl? Is this a is there
Yes.
it was really just a mugging? Is this gang violence? Like there's in a sense a world of ambiguity. You're looking, everything you're seeing almost in the periphery of your vision. Um, and the characters are too.
Yeah, there's a it's funny though, like there's I almost want to diagram the play in a way. This would ruin the play and like not be what
No,
I would actually do.
no,
But
I don't think you would.
I think that the necessary impossible configuration. I'm ignoring any actual necessity or definition as this, but I think there isn't. I think that does betray a little more about the structure of enjoyment in the play, because you have a limited configuration of what's going to be true or false based on what they tell you. Within the logic of the play, the man's either a pianist or he's not a pianist. We're not going to talk about any other options or some sliding, in between, some spectrum. Um, but I do wonder if there's any character where them lying is not binary. Like either they're who they say they are or literally anything is possible.
Well, I think, like, one thing I want to say about it is the specific concretes, the biographical details are ambiguous, but there's nothing ambiguous about the characters. In the sense that Meg is just this lanternly, kind of vain, stupid woman.
Yeah.
Petey is a nice but kind of helpless individual.
Yes.
Stanley is a mess and kind of artistic, but really frustrated, also a bit sarcastic. Goldman's an ass. Um,
Yeah.
McCann is very nervous and subservient in a way to McCann. Like, we don't know any specific things, but those facts about their characters are incontrovertible. They stand out in your mind. Like, these people, you know them, you believe in them.
Yeah.
There's it's
Just between this wouldn't make sense to our audience, but categorically, what's at stake in this play is not the imaginary. We know who these people are and their
yeah,
identity as affects. What's at stake is the symbolic. Like,
yeah, as
what
in,
is their role
yeah,
in this world?
yeah, as
What
in,
are they
the
doing?
imaginary is like, we know their emotional relationships, we know what they feel about each other.
And
uh,
how they
but
affect each other, and how you relate to or you don't relate to, or you don't like, all that stuff is really not at issue.
yeah, like,
You know all
the emotional reality is completely, concisely, crisply, brilliantly clear. Um, just it's just this, the specifics, the little facts. Oh, born in 1892. It's like, it doesn't matter. Doesn't
that.
matter. Okay.
It's like I had a friend who would go to Starbucks, and I went to it with him one time. He was a coworker at Quality Dairy, a place I worked, and I go, okay, I'll have that. And he go, name, and I go, Chris, and he goes, okay, I'll have a coffee. And what's your name? And he goes, Thor. And they go, okay, Thor. But from our side, I know he's fucking around, and he always gives different Norse gods. But from the barista's side, she was suddenly caught where she couldn't laugh because it might be his actual name because she doesn't know that guy. So she went, oh, yes, Thor, thank you. Here you go. And then we laugh and she laughs and everyone's in and it's fine. But at first, it's like, you know, you can
Yeah.
really push it, be like, my name is Arun Khachaturian the third. You're like, okay.
Well, I've actually
Okay,
done
well,
it.
yeah. Oh, you've done it.
The thing
Okay.
that's funny about that is, I
Uh-huh.
actually, I've done that before, but I don't give an interesting name. I just say, "Oh, I'm Brad." You know, I'm Fred. Like I just give like the most vanilla name, um,
Well,
just
now you
because
got to
it's
go in and
funny.
be like, I am Theodontus Marex or something. Give Roman names. You know, the Roman ones, those are ridiculous.
No, it's Bob.
Just Bob. I
Like I
mean,
just,
I
you
mean,
know,
okay,
my,
so
my
like,
actual name is more eyebrow raising in a sense.
so isn't there a sense also, this is not super important to the interpretation of the play, but it does act on my enjoyment of the play. When it's harmless, lying's kind of fun. When it's like a barista, you know, I mean, there's certain aspects of like of lies that really are not to me at stake ethically at all. They're just sort of they're nothing. They're just, you know,
Yeah,
so
like
make it
that's
fun.
yeah, it's yeah, like that sort of thing. Like I mean, it's not you're not actually lying in any meaningful sense of the word.
Right.
Of it's just like yeah, they really just asking like, give me an identification.
Yeah,
Like as in like if they actually asked you like, is your name actually Thor? No, no, it's not. Like
it's
that's what,
Brutus.
how that conversation would happen.
Yeah, I mean, I
or,
remember
or
at
maybe
college,
you say yes, but in a way that was obviously like, yeah, I'm messing with you, you know. Um, so like the tone of the voice tells the truth.
yeah,
Um,
I worked when I worked at this store doing customer service. I don't know anything about sports, but I worked from like 10 to 6 a lot of times, and I had a friend who worked 8 to 12, and he knew everything about sports. So he'd start off with the first 2 hours. How about them Bears last night? Oh yeah, it was great. Fumbled at the third and the third ending. And then like by 11 a.m. I'd be like, man, how about them Bears fumbling at the third ending? And so like, and then my coworker was waiting. He was like, "Shut up, Chris. You don't know anything about sports." And in my mind, I was like, "Yeah, but it doesn't matter. Like, you don't like you didn't watch the game with this guy, and it's not that complicated."
yeah, that's a good. That's just great. That's just great.
So I do like lying. I mean, I'm going to say that with a caveat that only in situations that I deem where obviously ethics is
Well,
not at play.
well, when it's clearly, it just has a playful function. It's like no, you're not telling like lies about your life or something. Like I've met like one or two people who just like they just would lie fabulously about the things they owned and the things they did, and it's like they just wanted that vanity, and it's like wow, that's really unpleasant.
It's really unpleasant, and it also, you know, in our culture right now, like there's so many grifters, right? I mean, there's so many like, oh, send me money. I only have 1 billion, but I need that second billion to do a thing. You know, there's so much of that right now that that's sort of an area that isn't fun for me to lie in. You know, no, I don't need
Yeah,
anything
well,
from
that's
you.
well, that's not what you're doing. Like, you're just like,
Exactly.
I mean, you're just playing like a prank.
Yeah.
Like that. It's even more innocuous than a prank. So
And I think that like, and if someone was like, "Oh, do you really like sports?" I'm sure there was more than once where I said, "Oh no, I'm sorry, I don't actually know anything about sports," and then I would no doubt tell the person how I came to that
yeah,
fact.
as in, is your name actually Thor? Uh,
Yeah.
you know.
Whereas here, the lies are. I think it's a funny play, but I think another vector that you could look at this play through is what people's lies matter versus what people's lies are just vanity.
Yeah, I mean, I think Meg when she's talking about like when Stanley was a great pianist or something like that, or when Stanley is like talking, oh, I'm gonna have this great world around. We're going to Berlin, Cairo, Constantinople, Vladivostok. It's like yeah, okay, that's a lie. That's kind of a vanity thing. Or like actually, I just found one of like Stanley's talking to McCann, and he's trying to sort of get him on his side a bit, and McCann's Irish. He says, I know Ireland very well. I have many friends there. I love that country and I admire and trust its people. I trust them. They respect the truth and they have a sense of humor. I think the policemen are wonderful. I've been there. I've never seen such sunsets. What about coming out to a drink with me? There's a pub down the hall. Service drunk Guinness. Very difficult to get in these parts. And it's like that's just so like yeah, he's trying to get McCann on his side. He's not
Yeah.
doing he's not doing I know he's not been to Ireland. He doesn't think the policemen are great. And the same thing later, like when like Stanley's talking to Goldberg and McCann, he says, "Well, you wouldn't like it here anyway." And like I am the manager of this establishment. It's like like I need to protect these people here. And it's like, oh, those things are lies. Those are lies.
Yeah.
They don't mean any. Like all it is he feels threatened. He feels threatened by them, and he's trying to ward them off with whatever kind of confabulation, because that's what people do here. They confabulate. Um, um,
I
that
think,
he
yeah,
can muster.
I think you're right. But I also think, I think you're right. It's actually not a but. And I think that some people's lies are consequential, whereas other people's lies, yeah, like structurally, McCann and oh my god, I can never remember his name. Uh,
Goldberg.
Goldberg. God, McCann and Goldberg's name lies. Um, well, equally, the words don't have a justifiable true belief. They don't matter in that sense. They produce different effects. The words still produce effects. I mean,
Yes.
it's just
Yes.
some people's lies matter, whereas other people's lies aren't going to get the plot moving.
Yeah. Let's see. On that point, yeah, Goldberg. His lies are just they're basically vanity lies. Like even even if they're truths, they're lies. Just all this stuff about like oh my wife, what a woman. Or Uncle Blimey, I tell you, he was a real great guy, real straight shooter. Um, like all that stuff, like it's lies, even if it were true. The only characters that don't really lie in the play are Petey, who's
And
barely
Meg.
ever around. What?
And Meg.
No, Meg lies.
Oh, does she? Does she
She
lie?
lies about. Well, at least she's hopelessly confused about Stanley. Like well, Stanley says they shut me out, and she's like, no, he was locked in, and that makes it seem more sort of like a funny event, like the way she
Oh
presents it.
yeah.
And I always,
I took that as that Stanley lied to her too and told a
oh,
different
Stanley
story.
lied to her too, but she's lying on a lie.
Well, I'm wondering if Stanley told two different stories.
No, Stanley just told the story once, and then Meg repeats the story in her own distorted.
Ah, okay, got it, got it, got it.
But she doesn't lie nearly as much as other ones. It's an impression. Maybe there's more. I don't know. Um, McCann doesn't really lie. I don't get the impression that he lies about things. He's too timid.
Yeah.
Um, it's a question of how verbal the character is too, where they get to the point of just coming up with things.
I
Um,
think there's also a difference between like okay, like there's so many different types of lies. It's such a subjectivity is complicated, right? Like there's certain lies that when pinned down you'd confront were just serving a purpose that was like ego inflation or whatever.
mhm.
And I think that when Goldberg lies, obviously there's a little of that, but it's even more empty. Like he's lying because he has a job to do and is almost just having fun doing it. Like
Well,
the truth of his lies is I'm gonna stab you. I'm gonna stab you with words. And like that's like all he says, no matter what he actually says in the whole damn play. So he just turns it into a free space and throws whatever in there.
the thing is, by the way, is that the lie is that it's not that he's those as in all the facts might be true. If you actually like woke him up in the middle of the night and asked him, "Is that true?" He'd say, "Yeah." It's the real thing is like the fundamental essence of it though is a lie of like no, like I'm conveying these conventional attitudes. Like one thing I have to say is
Yeah, I agree.
I remember having discussions or making points to people, and I hadn't fully thought through those points in a certain way. Like I understood them, I they made sense to me on a big level. It wasn't like I was, I don't know, just like making stuff up or. But I look back at some of those because I didn't, in a sense, think through them as hard as I at least would now, and it feels propagandistic to me. It feels, on a certain level, dishonest. The points that I made in the past.
Mm.
And it's like, in a sense, like, yeah, I was telling the truth. I really was. I wasn't. I wasn't telling. I wasn't. There wasn't anything false. This is really what I thought. But there was a certain level of personal engagement that I was detached from. These words weren't coming from me. These words were half parroted from someone else. And that's a sort of a sense of in which it was a dead terminology I was repeating. Um, so that's the sense in which it's a lie. It's inauthentic, which is a a very different thing. I mean, what would be an authentic lie? Um,
There's no Jews in here. No, no, World War II. There's no Jews in here.
oh, in the play?
No, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 no. I'm okay. Okay. You're a person harboring Jews in World War II.
Oh
Not
yes,
there's
yes,
no Jews in here.
yes. That okay. Now yes, now I understand. Yeah, that would be one. I'm thinking more in a personal
I mean,
context.
I was like, I think Goldberg, the name, in the play, I think that would be that's not relevant. But yeah, like I think lying in an ethical way would be.
Oh, I think. Oh, here's one that I just thought of is like
Yeah.
I can imagine like a mother of a very difficult, confused child,
Hmm.
and she's maybe telling another mother sort of a fake story in a sense, like it didn't happen
Hmm.
in a way, but it's like she really feels like, yeah, no, my kid really is a good kid deep down. I see it. It just he doesn't never comes out. And you people never get to see like the times he's really good and precious and dear to me, and like
Yes.
and like she's telling a lie because that really is how she feels about it. And she really has good reason to think that, but she just doesn't have the ability to like point that out to people in a convincing way, and she comes up with this of like as like almost more of a symbol of that. Now, I wouldn't never recommend someone do that in real life, but I can just saying like that would be a sense in where like this artistic the fabrication is artistic, and it's like yeah, that conveyed the truth of the matter better than the actual
Yeah.
facts.
I also think that if you flip it around, um, you do wind up in a more horrifying scenario where, the mom who's supposed to be the last support of the child goes, "My kid's a piece of shit." It's like, oh, ow, fuck. Can you just tell me the lie?
Yeah,
Like something like my neighbor, where it's like she would always insult her kids, and like, but then she would tell other people, "Oh, I love my kid. The kids are great." Blah blah blah. That one was like a no. We know how you actually feel. It's not a deep down love of your kids that you're lying for. It's actually a deep down hatred of your kids that you're lying for. Um,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is
That's
rarer and sadder, but
Yeah, that human being you're referring, that flesh pile that you're referring to,
yes.
that you've told me about before. Um, like yeah, Jesus Christ, that's one where it's like, I feel like there's a different level of evasiveness that Pinter isn't even touching. That she represents. Like it makes Goldberg look human. Um,
Well, I think that like the point I was just making is that I think you're right. When you lie for your kid and you deep down know that you love them and that what your words are saying are topically a lie, but you love them and whatever. Um, that the opposite, that the mom secretly hates her kids, is that's where you produce the most traumatic. play you could write, right? Like that's
Yeah, well,
secretly hate my family is not a
this is one thing. And the reason why I feel like it's I'm like beneath, like that woman is beneath that is it's to me like Trump of I don't think he actually has opinions about things. I don't think he has a brain that where truth testing happens sufficiently where like you can say he actually believes things. It's just I mean in a sense he's the most Pinter-esque thing of he's really like he really is he just has these fears and anxieties and feelings of like a desire for approval and the words don't mean anything. He's just belting them out like like the whole story behind Drain the Swamp. Like apparently in some interview he was just saying like yeah I thought it was sort of cheesy saying it, but then I said it at one time at a rally once and oh boy the crowd were, and then I started to say it like I meant it. This is literally what the man says, and
whew,
and it's just
whew.
and it's like yeah that's what everything he says means. And
Yeah.
it's in a sense that's the purest form but of it that's Goldberg in a deeper way, but at least Goldberg has enough like dignity and sophistication.
Mhm.
It's like it's a little more like yeah there's nothing behind his face like he's a fundamentally hollow person, but there's at least I don't know there's a little bit of dignity to it. There's a little bit of like a memory of a soul maybe. McCann has there's a little phrase where he sort of has a soul he remembers. you know
It's like the great line from Singing in the Rain, dignity, always dignity. Which works perfectly for Pinter, I think. It's I mean, I could see Goldberg saying dignity, always dignity. I mean, he says basically as much.
yeah.
By the way, an inversion on the Trump formula you were saying is the Pascal formula. Pray, do the prayer, and belief will eventually follow. Say the phrase, hear the audience, and eventually you'll believe it. It's horrifying.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah,
it's
I find
that's bad, but it's kind of an inversion.
yeah, it is a bit of one where that's I just think that Pascal's wager is one of just those. It's just a level of dishonesty I can't understand a man as brilliant as Pascal having. And the idea of like if I were a Christian, like that would just be one of the things like I'd feel like no, that's the opposite of what I want from someone who believes in this. Like
Mhm.
you should go to hell for saying that. Um, like
Have
anyway,
you read the Pensies?
the what?
Have you read the Pensies?
No, well, I like bits and pieces, but not. But I haven't read that much of it.
It's extremely dissonant because I heard a lecturer once say Pascal's God is a god of like structural bureaucracy. Like you're making a very structural choice to believe in a god
Hmm.
based on a wager. And like what's weird about that is that in the Pensies, there's a lot of dissonance between that and a more emotional experience. And so it's he's a very weird figure to me, just on a
Yeah, yeah, that is actually a really good point. I never actually put together the two Pascals of one who's like the proto-existentialist, who's, like really in anxiety about his faith and the world, and like the other one who's, I mean, that's not. It's like you can't caricature Pascal's wager. It's so inauthentic.
interesting.
Uh,
I find it to be so like I think you can take it into an existentialist framework and say that we make similar wagers often enough.
well, one thing is that well, okay. The one thing about it, like okay, the idea of I'm going to believe something because it achieves something for me. that's like almost the core of lying and inauthenticity. Like, I'm going to say this because this makes me feel better about things, and I don't want to deal with that unpleasant truth, and my friends will like me better, and like that is the core of being a faker. And the idea of like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to say this, or else, I might be tortured forever. I mean, that's like the core of just authenticity. No, I wasn't convinced because I saw something. I was like, no, I just no, I just I just want to get the nice thing if I can get it. Um,
It's a good point. When people
there
call
are
him,
better arguments for God. I just want to
there are
say,
better. I mean, that is kind of an interesting thing, right? Like Pascal's this brilliant guy in multiple fields, and his argument is, in a lot of sense, not really one that's very hard to for any layperson to engage with because it's so suspect. Because it's like, well, I mean, on the atheist experience, I sometimes watch, they call like a call and go, well, what convinced you? Pascal's wager. And just first of all, I don't actually believe Pascal's wagers ever convinced anyone in the world to believe in a god. And whoever it has convinced, I'm really hopeful I can then show them the flaws and then they'll believe whatever else because that person might be more malleable than other people.
yeah,
But
well,
it's very weird when someone's like, I am convinced by Pascal's wager. And what's really going on is they believed to begin with, like Pascal, who had a thing and then wrote the Pascal's wager after they believed. And then they thought that was the best argument to hurl at the wall.
yeah, I find it. I mean, there's so many logical errors too. You're like, well, there's like 50 other gods.
That's the one I go to.
It's like that's like it's. I mean, it's just. I mean, all the arguments for God are just evasions fundamentally. Like,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
the
with
only
Pascal, I could say, what about a god that only gets you to heaven if you don't believe in it with all your existence?
yeah, it's like
There
okay,
you go.
like
I've defeated the formula. Sure, whatever.
yeah, it's just like the only thing that like is at all plausible to me is like when I've talked to certain one friend of mine is like he talks about like just certain intense spiritual experiences he's had and like, okay, I can. That's at least something I can kind of get behind. I can kind of like see, like, okay, there's something emotionally that's really resonating with you about Christianity. I don't know how. I don't know how, but at least I can get that. But getting back to Pinter,
Yes. And
um,
also I would agree that emotional resonance is much more authentic in my brain than playing with dice. Okay, back to Pinter.
yeah, but it's like just a few things about the introduction. Just um, I think there's so many like great things in this introduction. It's really just marvelous the things he talks about. But like one of them is just saying like a play is not an essay, nor should a playwright under any exhortation damage the consistency of his characters by injecting a remedy or apology for their actions into the last act simply because we have been brought up to expect rain or sunshine, the last act resolution. To supply an explicit moral tag to an evolving, compulsive, dramatic image seems to be facile, impertinent, and dishonest. When this takes place, it is not theater, but a crossword puzzle. The audience holds the paper, the play fills in the blanks, everyone's happy. And that to me is like, okay, he's not, one thing I want to say, he's not denouncing the well made play. He's not
No.
saying that Ibsen is like, well, he can go to hell. What he's saying is you can't force that. If you have no resolution and the characters, there's something sort of hidden or mercurial or undefined about them in a sense, and you can't force them to explain themselves more than they could possibly explain about themselves.
Yeah.
Um,
He said they want the playwright to be a prophet.
Yeah, yeah, that's later. And it's like, yeah, like you can't do that. Like here, it's like, yeah, like was Stanley a successful pianist? Was he ever really a pianist? Did he? Was he like what exactly? What is Goldberg's true name? Like these don't matter. Um, these are not questions that like yeah, I don't know. like you can't force them out of him. And like, he talks also about, the idea of a character just has to live for themselves. I can't remember where exactly it is, but I like that. And this way, this connects to actually something Chekhov talked about.
Mm.
Of in a letter, he says that you can't. It's what's important about a short story is just is stating a problem. You don't necessarily need to give a solution. Um, and that's very much what we had when we talked about Chekhov and Lady with Little Dog or Yonich. It's like those are just problems. Like look, what can we do about this? There's no answer. There's not no answer that he's presenting.
Yeah,
And like that's just very authentic. Like he's not going to pretend to know how to fix this.
yeah.
Um,
By the way, on that, I agree completely. He's using this word in a different way, but I liked this quote, which goes with what we're saying too. When a character cannot be comfortably defined or understood in terms of the familiar, the tendency is to perch him on a symbolic shelf out of harm's way. Once there, he can be talked about, but need not be lived with. And I liked that because if you take my version of the word symbolic, which is not what he means, it's almost like, okay, we're just gonna not let that be factual. It's always at issue, and you're left with the character dealing with that. But I liked how many beginning plays begin, "Hi, my name is John. I'm a policeman." "Yes, hi John, I'm a fireman." "Ah, look over there. That's the lawyer, the banker, and the lady." And it's like all these people get just fit into roles. And I I think that's most bad movies too. Like there's so many bad movies where it's like, oh well, he's in this role, so he's gonna do like this series of things.
yeah, it's very much. I really, really admire that statement of his. Be like, I can just see that of like somebody going to this play and like, oh, you see, this is about the repression of society. And it's like, oh yes, like Goldberg represents, Blada about the bureaucracy, and McCain represents this about the, the murderous police, or something like that. Like, yeah, great, you've just imprisoned these real characters behind your abstractions. You're not actually going to engage with them and feel with them and think about them. They're not people. They're just dead terms to you. Um,
Yeah,
they're you know
yeah.
they're as dead as is 847 possible or necessary. Um, it's just like that's what you're talking about. Um,
So before we go, because I think we're getting
yeah,
at a
yeah,
really good
yeah.
point,
We've talked this out.
I I think that generally about our series, we're talking about art is trauma. I think there's another aspect of it, another word I want to throw in there as well, that I felt in the Pinter, which is that art can be a revelation. It can show you a thing that hits as truthful, that hits as the truth. It's a funny sentence to say in a play that's mainly about people lying, but it felt like a revelation reading Pinter for
Well,
me. I'm very
that's what
excited.
it is. Like that's what we mean by trauma, as in
Ah,
it. Yeah, as in like what we mean by trauma is there's this sort of dead film of conventional existence that we live in. There's nothing wrong with habit, but we need habits in order to survive, but we can be
yeah,
lost in habit. And the idea is, the trauma is okay, break me out of that. Show me something new, defy the conventions, make me feel. And that's what this does. I mean, for me, it's like, it's I think about this when I'm talking with it. I think about like, well, like when you and I are talking, are we really talking about the play? Like, are we really trying to get at the truth here? Or is there anything else like that's infiltrating and infecting this and not making it less real than it actually should be? Like, I do thinking about that, and it's like this is something that is it that's one thing I get out of reading Pinter is like this sense of, yeah, do you mean the words you're saying? Are you expressing yourself?
yeah.
So yeah, that's you're right. We could have called art is revelation, but that's less controversial. Um,
I think I think it would also get maybe some weird hits. Like they're not talking about the Book of Revelation at all.
yeah, yeah,
It's like,
but
no, no, man, you haven't read the Book of Revelation.
yeah,
This is the Book of Revelation.
yeah this is oh, Christ. Yeah, all right. Well, it was a great talk, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, all right. So, bye, everybody.
Bye.